Welcome back to It's Your Story to Tell. If you caught part one, you know that Alessio's journey to health wasn't easy, but she didn't just stop at, when it got hard, she kept looking for answers for herself, having to go outside of the traditional medical community and found support within functional medicine. And now she is taking all those lessons, all that pain, and turning it into purpose. She became a coach and she is helping others to navigate their own health struggles. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about how she moved from frustration to transformation. And if you're feeling stuck in your health journey, this episode is definitely for you. And learnings into a place that feels so fulfilling and like we're actually doing the work of helping people to heal. Was there a point in your journey where you thought, I can help others. Like I can take all of this and use it for good.
Definitely. I mean, I feel the part that I mentioned about, after the diagnosis of Hashimoto's and shopping and, being able to email my doctor, and that was great and supportive of it all. But I felt like there has to be more, to be able to, support others who are going through similar experiences, struggling to get their health back. And I did find, a few online support communities, but to me, online support, only goes so far. It wasn't like I knew about nurse coaching then, but in the back of my mind, I felt like, this is something that I can, use my experience to help others in the future. And then similar with the yoga teacher training, with learning about the meditation and Ayurvedic medicine, I felt like there was so much in that and so much that could be used and applied in, our healthcare system.
Tell us a little bit about your journey as a coach and then the types of clients and things that you feel best equipped to support.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, first thing that came to mind when I learned about nurse coaching definitely wasn't even like thinking twice. I was like, this is what I am meant to do. I remember I was at a med legal conference, actually, when I was working as a legal nurse consultant at the time, and there was a vendor that was doing video interviews of the attendees, and I started talking with him, and he was telling me how his wife is a nurse who teaches nurses how to be nurse coaches. And I was immediately like intrigued and tell me more. I need to know everything. What is this? How come I haven't heard about it? And
Right.
so yeah, all those things, that I had been thinking about prior, I was like, yes, I, could help people with Hashimoto's who are struggling, with symptoms that similar to what I experienced, or, I can incorporate what I learned in my yoga teacher training and with the meditation and Ayurveda into, working with clients who are looking into more of that holistic approach. So with all of that, I, immediately went down all the rabbit holes and picked, that nurse's brain and, had a few calls with her and ended up applying to the Nurse Coach Collective and was accepted. And then I ended up hiring that first nurse coach that I met as my first nurse coach. And at the time I hadn't even thought to look into other programs because I thought, I would have known like about this before, and that they're, had that I known about this, I would have looked into other programs. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of how it all began. And then moving more into, like I said, into the, I knew I wanted to take the functional medicine for nurses course like you had taken. I took that shortly after I graduated and passed my nurse coach board certification. And at the end of that, enrolled in the nutrition for nurses course, because that's a whole nother conversation that I think we could have, just how mind-blowing it is that medical schools and nursing schools, I mean, at least the one that I attended, didn't require nutrition as a prerequisite. It was optional and I wanted to take it, but I had the require ones that I had to take, the micro or I had to redo biology and chemistry because it had been so long since I had taken them in high school. So then, microbiome, anatomy, pathophysiology, and all that. But I'm excited to be in the nutrition for nurses course now. And I've had actually some very well respected neurologists that I saw in San Diego be very frank with me and admit that, they've been in this industry 17 plus years. I mean, this was a long time ago now, but at the time, and had patients that wrote books about migraine relief from eliminating gluten. And so, luckily he's very open-minded about it. And it just,
Hmm.
depends on the provider, kind of back to what you were saying before about that, oncologist who was a naturopath and then became Western medicine uh, oncologist. Like I know in San Diego. I think I don't remember with Scripps or UCSD. And I don't know which one she did first, but she's trained in both Eastern and Western medicine, specifically for rheumatology. And
Wow.
when I remember first hearing about that, I was just, yeah, so amazed. And it's just interesting. And, it depends doctor to doctor. Some are more open-minded about others. I mean, hopefully that will change over time and nutrition will be something that's considered more.
And hopefully it's actual nutrition, not what our food pyramid today looks like. I was talking to one of my doctor friends and she's like, yeah, in my nutrition class, instructor said that French fries were a vegetable. I'm like, okay, that's some interesting nutrition right there, but definitely no. Maybe she was exaggerating a little bit, but it does just go to say we have an issue with our nutrition. And, we probably have some of the worst nutrition in all of the world. And it's definitely impacting us. We have the highest rates of obesity and chronic disease and all of these things that really do relate back to how do we care for ourselves. And one of the things in my practice, it's not just about knowing what to do. Because if we go to the internet, we can figure out how to do an elimination. We can figure out, we all know, calories in, calories out equals how much weight loss. But I remember one of my early clients I was actually working with as part of my hours to sit for the board certification in our course. And it hit me as we were talking and we were working through things because she came to me and she said, I want to lower my blood pressure. I'm borderline diabetic. And so we started talking about all these things. And then we uncovered the reason she had issues with food. It was a control thing. And as a child, as we explored that, she was sharing how her mother had her in Jenny Craig and all of these things at a young age and was always controlling what she ate, talking about how she looked, all of these different things. Knew all the things to do, but there was a reason why she was unable to be successful and following through with the information. And so as she was able to understand the root cause, and it was an emotional root cause versus something else going on with the body. And I don't know if you've seen that, but I was diagnosed in college with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. For those of you who don't know what that is, chronic migraine, like all of these things. But there was a lot of things in my past and traumatic things that I had suppressed and wasn't dealing with. And I truly believe the body keeps the score. And it's all about getting curious and uncovering the root cause, which sometimes is not even what you're thinking when you're thinking, okay, I have a high blood pressure and I am overweight, but there's something deeper there.
Yes, thank you for sharing so much. I feel like to expand upon that. And I think that's what's really so incredible about nurse coaching and that we, work with our clients and, you know, as much as they allow us to dig into, like what you said, is the root cause. So we can really get down to, finding the source of what is causing, maybe like in the example you shared, the control. So that's why I think that, nurse coaching is so beneficial and so important. I think that we really are going to be able to help, so many individuals across the country and the world, in terms of more prevention rather than, like, okay, let's go into the doctor because of high blood pressure and then, get the prescription for XYZ and then, the side effects ABC to go back
That's
to the
something.
doctor to, and then it's just that vicious cycle. So, with nurse coaching, really taking that preventative approach to be able to, address things, like you said, at the root cause.
And sometimes we have to have medicine. There can be deficits in the body that we need
Sure.
to address. And then there's times where you may need to be on blood pressure medication until you can actually work through all of the emotional and then build the lifestyle management. And so it's not looking at just one way of doing it and this is the way you're going to even do it in 2 months or a year from now, because as you go through this process, you can get off this medication because you've been able to accomplish this. And that's what I think is really great about it, is this journey to well-being and to learning how to, we hear the term resilience and being resilient, and I think that really is what people have termed, burnout in so many cases, where we just push and push and we keep going. And it's just interesting how we get to educate on that mindfulness piece, and how, you think of self-care and it's no, it's not go get a massage. That can be part of it, but, go get your nails done. It's so much deeper than that. And so I just love when someone is ready to do that work and they're so motivated to see their life look different. They have this dream for themselves and they're willing to go where you have to go in order to accomplish that and increase their skills so that they can increase their capacity, because it's really not about just like white knuckling it. I got to get through this. It's really about learning to adapt into something new, which it seems like through your journey, that's definitely something that you have had to do, is just really adapt and learn new skills and create a life that really accommodates overall health and well-being.
Definitely. And I think that's what's so beautiful about functional medicine. We're looking at the whole body and all the systems, not just one, like, oh, you have, a cardiac issue. Let's only look at, your cardiac blood work or XYZ. We're really looking at everything to be able to get to that root cause, but also, the slowing down aspect, like, Rich Litvin says, and I remember learning about in the collective about slowing down to speed up. Actually, in our society, it's, oftentimes we are taught it's like the more you're doing, the better you're doing, go, 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 no time to slow down. And we really need to, I think, take a step back and really embrace that slowing down to speed up. And also the term monotasking, I remember learning about, that I'd never even heard of before. You hear multitasking and it goes along with that, like whoever's doing more is doing better, but it's not true. It's not necessarily the case. It's like, to be able to slow down and really, focus on being in the present moment and, being mindful and aware of, our thoughts, actions, feelings, and what we're doing in our day-to-day lives, and how that's affecting, our mind, body, spirit, and our, well-being overall. Yeah. So that's what I really love about, the functional medicine, but then also the meditation goes along with that, hand in hand as well, because it's really slowing down to get present, not just your mind, but your breath, which, everything's all connected and interrelated.
Yeah, I think I had a really hard time with mindfulness and not slowing down, because I was a doer. I was a high achiever, get things done. I could go at a really fast pace. I was burning out, but on the inside, but I didn't want anyone to see that on the outside. But it is so true when you slow down. You talked about like the ideas that come to you and all of those things, because when you can slow down, you actually can think. You're not in fight, flight, just moving through the motions, trying to get things done, surviving, but you're really making space for increased capacity and just increased understanding, increased self-awareness, and that intentionality of what choice do I want to make? Does this align with where I want to go, or is it taking me a different direction? If you can't slow down, there's not even space for that conversation with yourself. And so I love that. Well, what would be something, like a piece of advice that you would give to someone who was faced with this idea of having to make a big change in their, kind of like you did, where you had to go through changing your diet, going through the pain of looking at all those labels? What would you say to them?
I would probably say to hire a nurse coach.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it's good. It's good advice. I like it.
no, but in all honesty, I mean, easier said than done. Like, start small and one day at a time, and, try not to get overwhelmed by the symptoms or the diagnoses or I remember when I first got the diagnoses and I was still having all the symptoms and trying to learn about, you know, Hashimoto's and everything, and buying books and reading about it and then going on the internet, and it just became too much. And when ultimately all I really wanted to do was feel better. So just trying not to get caught up in all of that, and really just honoring yourself and recognizing your symptoms. And also, easier said than done, not getting discouraged if you're being dismissed by providers, but really just trusting and respecting that you know yourself best and your body best, and that there is hope and there is help out there for you. So there's nurse coaches that have their niches and work with specific clients. And if that's something, that someone out there is listening, maybe interested in, or functional medicine provider. I mean, obviously it's going to depend on the condition or, the symptoms and disease and illness and process and all of that. But just remembering that, there will be someone out there that can help you. If you haven't found them yet, just
Keep
having
looking.
faith
Don't give
and
up.
trusting the process. And as cliche as it sounds, like you're exactly where you need to be. But look into hiring a nurse coach. Not me, but not necessarily me, but that nurse coaches really, can help and provide that support. Like, I definitely, would have wanted to work with one and hire one, not just for the, additional support, but even like to go grocery shopping with. Like, now that's something that I offer, for someone that's struggling, not just specifically with Hashimoto's, but any condition, and they are looking for help with, nutrition and, anything related to, certain food plan or anything like that.
So practical. I love that. Because,
Yeah.
taking that frustration of being in the grocery store and really being able to walk with someone through that and help them. Because even coming up with recipes and food that tastes good, because it is such a big part of our lives. You want to be able to find ways to enjoy the foods and things that you eat, because it's part of just our culture. And so I think that's awesome that you're able to
Definitely.
help people with that.
If you're listening and you're someone that's interested in meditation, or want to get into more of like a habitual practice of it, I didn't mention before, but I had a really hard time with it in the beginning. I remember looking back, and I worked with someone one-on-one, and I really struggled because I, had this monkey mind that was all over the place and just had a lot of doubt. Like, I don't know if I can do this, and I don't know if this is for me, and a lot of questioning. So I don't want people to get the impression that it's like, super easy and yeah, oh, go meditate and you'll feel amazing. I mean, that's like, now if I'm kind of like in a funk or whatever, in a spot where I'm like, I need a quick pick me up or fix, like, I will do a meditation, and majority of the time I will feel better. And so I just want people who are listening to know that not to give up, and there's no such thing as a bad meditation, basically. So I remember one of the times I, was talking to someone about meditation, and, they would say they would do their meditation before bed to relax. And I just didn't get it. I was like, why didn't you just go to bed if you're like ready? It just didn't make sense to me. But now I get it.
We'll have contact information for Laura in the show notes so that you can get in touch with her. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your journey and how you are making a difference. I think it's so powerful when we can take those things that were painful and turn them into something beautiful. Listeners, thank you for listening. We're so grateful for you. And if you're struggling, Laura's story is a powerful reminder that healing is possible. So don't give up. You can find that right support. Just keep looking and find a nurse coach, because guess what? They're really good at finding resources and navigating things alongside of you. If you resonated with this, we would love it if you would like and share the podcast. That's the way we can touch more people's lives, and you can be part of also making a difference by sharing these stories. Come back next week for another great story. We are looking forward to continuing to bring inspiration of what's possible when you do the work to heal. Take care.